So today we'll be looking at standard hollow concrete blocks, regulatory requirements. So we'll be taking some time to dig down into the standard and see exactly what it says and what is required and what consumers can look about. And then our presenter, Mr. Christopher Savario, will speak directly to our consumers for the information to be passed greatly. So my information is at the bottom of the screen. That's my email address and my contact number. So if needs be, please write down that contact number is 365-1223. And if you need assistance at any time, feel free to call me and I'll guide you as best as I can. So we monitor several products as Mr. Christie alluded to. So we're looking at our standards hollow concrete block today, which is a JS35. We also have standards for ready mix concrete, Portland cement, and there are 3 Portland cements available out there to you. We'll be looking at them today and the benefits from each. So please stay tuned. So hot roll steel bars, aggregates for concrete, curb units, and zinc coils. These are the standards that we go out there and monitor on a day-to-day basis. So today we'll be looking at NCRA's mandate and trying to just show you exactly what the NCRA is about. Our CEO did a great job in explaining. I'll just underline a couple little things, and then we'll look at the vision and also the mission of the NCRA. Then we'll go down into the regulatory requirements of the JS35, this new JS35, because the JS35 has been reviewed. So there are a couple things has been removed from the standard because it was a little bit too prescriptive. Mr. Delroy Christie, who is the president of the Building Associate Committee, he's a part of that committee. So you as block makers have a voice in that committee. So he's the president, and we revised that standard, and now it is launched in 2022. So, and then we're going to look at the regulatory requirements. What gives the NCRA power to go out in the public and regulate this product? And then we're going to look at the registration process for block makers. So here we go. So the mandate of the NCRA is to protect consumers. So our main mandate is to protect consumers, and these are in accordance to the Standard Act, which gives the inspector power to go into any premises that manufacture a product that a compulsory standard is there for. Weights and measures, we're talking about your scales and your gas stations and so on. So if you use a scale at your establishment to sell products, so you're selling by the weight, that scale must be verified by the NCRA. To Processed Food Act, so this deals with the manufacturing of food, and the Petroleum Act, and then the Trade Act. So the NCRA operates under by this mandate. So the vision of the NCRA is to be an internationally recognized inspection authority for regulating products where local and international standards and technical regulation exists. And if you notice in the background, you see a little ISO. And we are aiming for ISO 17020, which is the certification of inspection authority. So soon, NCRA will be a certified inspection authority, and we are currently working on getting that certification. So the NCRA's mission is to create confidence in the consuming public by maximizing compliance with regulations, stakeholder engagement, public education, and enforcement through a competent and professional team. And I put together a slide here with a couple of engagements that we've been on to educate the public of the requirements of standards and these products that standards cover. So we jump right down now into the standard hollow concrete blocks requirement as per the JS35. So in simple terms, a hollow concrete block is a precast concrete block made from a mixture of Portland cement, potable water, and a suitable aggregate. So that's Portland cement, potable water, and a suitable aggregate. Portland cement don't mean that it comes from Portland. It's just the origination of that name that we use in the cement industry. Cements that for structural use. So these intended use for these blocks is for load bearing. So the intended use for these blocks is load bearing. And I'll explain right now what it means by load bearing. So these blocks are designed to carry load, and each block play a critical part in transferring that load to the ground. So this is how the blocks carry load. So if you notice, blocks are not placed directly on top of each other. So we look at the diagram on the right. So when you touch one block, that load that you're putting on the block is going to be spread evenly, distributed across until it reaches the foundation without destroying the structure. And as long as that load is not greater than what it was designed for, that load will be distributed to the ground properly. So the materials requirements for that goes into this block, this product. So we're looking at the water shall be clean and free from impurities. So we're looking at drinkable water. So the water that you're using to make your blocks should be drinkable. So if I come to your factory and I look down in your drum, I should be seeing clean water. If I look down in your tank, I should be able to take a cup and take out some water and drink it, wash my face. So if it's not of that quality, it's a possibility you're below the requirements of this standard, because the standard said the water shall be clean and free from impurities. The cement shall comply with the JS32, JS301, and the JS320. I'll dig down into this in my next slide, so I won't expound on it much more. And the aggregate shall be clean and free from deleterious matter. So the aggregates that you get out there, you have to remember that the aggregate you go out to buy as a manufacturer is a byproduct of the quarries. So at no time possibly you won't go to the same quarry and get the same quality that you get time and time again, because a byproduct is actually something that they were throwing away and block makers find a use for it, and then it becomes a key ingredient for them. So you have to ensure that you are able to mix and match and play this aggregate very well, so you can always meet the standard. Quarries that has block making normally do their own blend. So they blend for themselves. So when you go there to buy, you have to ensure that you know the quality you're buying, or if you get a bad quality, you know how to mix it with sand and your 3/8 and all of that. So, and I put a picture right here with the possible sizes on the right hand side, that little bottle with the possible sizes that should be in your aggregate. So let's jump down now into the cement. This is a very interesting but controversial topic. So we're looking at our cements and the possible strength that we get from each type of cement available out there to you. So we're looking at our JS32 is the ordinary and rapid hardening, the JS301, which is a blended hydraulic, and the JS320 is a general purpose. These names might not mean much to you, but you'll understand as I get down into the meat of the matter. So the compressive strength that you get from these cement. So in testing these cements, they made some 50 millimeters, some 2-inch cubes from each cement, and they put them to test. And at 3 days, the JS32 gave 12 MPa, the 301 gave 13 MPa, and the compressive strength for the 320 is minimum requirements is 12 MPa. So these are minimum requirements I am quoting. So, and then we look at the 3 day is especially important to you to know, when can I transport these blocks? Does these blocks reach a strength that I can transport? So you are supposed to select your cement based on your operations at your factory. So the 28 days now, we're looking at 28 MPa for the 32, 25 MPa for the 301, and 25 for the 320. So again, you should select these requirements based on your mix ratio. So if you are used to using the the OPC, so the JS32 is the OPC. People normally call it the cement that comes in the big bag if you're buying from, say, Carib Cement. So the OPC, if you're using OPC, your mixed design using OPC should be different from the mixed design using say your Pazalon, or most people call it Carib Plus. So if you are using OPC and you change to the Carib Plus, your proportions of cement should be different. So you should look in your operations and see. And the JS320 is the anchor cement that most people know about. So this covers the cement and advising you to select the cement that best suits your need and suits your mixed design that you currently use at your factory. So now we're going into this dimensions of your blocks. Very important, because what I am noticing in the industry right now is that a lot of persons are buying blocks from the machines from China. These machines are coming down. So let's look at the most what you call it now, the block that is mostly manufactured, which is the 6-inch. So we're looking at width. So when you look at width, you come down and you look at 6-inch, so you have 143, and below it I converted it, you have 5.63. So if you are buying your machine from China and you don't send them this table, they'll send you a mold that makes the actual 6-inch block. 6-inch converted into millimeters is 150. That is the nominal size. We're testing according to the actual size. So 150 is what you'll get from the machines you're buying over by China. Our block size is 143, and the variation is +3 -5. So if I add 3 millimeters to 143, I'll get 146. So at the highest point, I am still not at 150. So as long as you buy that mold from China and you don't send them your specs, you will fail the dimension of the standard. So I'm asking you, please just pay attention to this slide specifically. If you want to take a picture, if you took down my number before, you can just send me a WhatsApp and say, Mr. Stedford, send me a presentation. I'll send it right to you right away. So take a picture of this page. I'll pause a little bit and ensure that your molds are in accordance with the standard. So we go down now to the requirements of the webs, your facial and your webs. And basically this table is just telling you that your webs should be 1 inch. All around your block, we should have 1 inch. And your female blocks, we should have 1 inch. The female blocks is not really covered in the standard, but we know the purpose for them. You're trying to have 2 half blocks. So that's the real reason for the female blocks. We know that it's most times a little bit stronger because they have a thicker web. So there's not a requirement for it, but we are not against it. So into manufacturing. So after demolding, so after you put everything together, you make up your block, you mix up your aggregate, your cement, and you sometimes you put in your sand, your water, and you get this dry mix, and you're molding your blocks. So after you mold your blocks, the block shall be protected until it is sufficiently hardened. So if you notice in the first standard, in the 2011 published standard, it told you that you must retain your blocks until they are 14 days old. That was removed from the standard because it was a little bit too prescriptive. So now the standard says, after demolding, the block shall be protected until it is sufficiently hardened to permit handling without damage. It shall be stored in on suitable pallets or platform which will prevent distortion or breakage of the blocks. Most block factories have this in place, but sometimes you go to new block factories, they have they storing the blocks on dirt and all of that. After time, it builds up a little nice aggregate base, but we're asking to prepare a surface that prevents distortion, prevents the blocks from bending up. So have that surface prepared for those blocks so they can be stored properly. Curing, most people don't know, but curing is very, very, very important to concrete. And this is one of the reasons this was included in the standard this time. So this curing wasn't a part of the block standard in past years. So now we review the standard and now we put this in to show to let manufacturers know that curing is very critical and important to block making, to concrete in general. So there are several ways for curing. What curing does, it prevents the water from leaving the cement particle too early from getting the maximum strength out of that cement. So that picture you see down on the lower left-hand corner of your screen is blocks out in the sun. They just make the blocks, they put them out in the sun. And that is drying out, removing the water too fast from the cement. So the cement doesn't get to perform to its optimal performance. So you can have a shaded area, and you can also cover with your tarpaulin to keep that moisture in the cement. And some people say steam curing even helps more. In fact, overseas they do steam curing, and it works wonders. Now we look at your compressive strength of your blocks. The compressive strength of your blocks. The average compressive strength for 10 blocks should be 7 megapascal. You might not be used to this term, so we are using, so I'll break it down to 1000 psi. So when we put, if you look at the picture on the right hand side, when I put that block under the machine, which I do no more because the functions are separated, so I send this to the lab. That you might not recognize that that's me in the picture. That was from my younger days. All right. So if you look at the picture, when that block is placed in the compression machine, that machine is going to squeeze that block until it breaks. And if it breaks before it reaches 1000 psi, it fails. If it breaks after, it meets the requirement, so it passes. So the average of 10 should be 7. But in averaging this 10, there should be no block shall fall below 5.6, which is about 600. No block shall fall below that. So you cannot say every block should be 5.6 because the average of 5.6 is going to give you 5.6. But say something happened during your production, one block come out lower than it was supposed, lower than the 7, for you to average to get the 7. You're allowed to have to not go below the 5.6. So please be consistent with especially your mixing. What I notice when I get back some results from the lab in assessing the results, I notice sometimes you have some blocks at 10 MPa, 5 MPa, 3 MPa, 6 MPa. That is basically telling me that there is something wrong with the mixing. There is something wrong with the mixing. Is either the cement isn't added properly, the cement and the water is added at the same time, don't give you a proper consistency, the mix is not consistent, or when I go on factory, I look at the mixture and you see some white particles. That is telling me that the cement is not distributed, the cement is not coating the material. The material is coating the cement. So we're asking to pay attention to your mixture so you can have consistent mix. So as I said before, the regulatory requirements to operate in accordance to the Standard Act, the standard regulation, and the standard regulations of 1983 and the amendment. So we operate by these 3 requirements. So according to the Standard Act of 1969, Section 6F, the Bureau shall have the power to make arrangement for inspection of any operation which is being carried out in or upon any premises in connection with the manufacture, production, processing, or treatment of any commodity, process, or practice for which a standard specification or a composite standard specification has been declared. So an inspector, nobody can really prevent. If you prevent an inspector from entering your premises, there's a possible fine. So the inspector have all right to visit the factories, do the inspection, carry out sampling, testing, and carry out the possible actions. And we'll go down into the actions in our subsequent slides. So if we look at the standard abatement regulation, and now I'm going to draw in our hardwares, especially if we come to the hardwares. So our manufacturing our hardwares, you are the person I'm speaking to right now. So when an inspector visits your premises, the inspector of the portal withdraw the products from sale. So if an inspector walk into a hardware and say, where are these blocks from? And you tell me over my Mass John Tom, and I check the website and I say Mass John Tom is not registered, we're going to withdraw those blocks from sale, do some testing. We can also detain those blocks. We can also move to seizure. And then we can go to disposal, condemnation, forfeiture. And then if no one abides, we move to prosecution and fine. So we're asking everybody just conform to this standard, conform to the law, so we doesn't have to explore these possibilities. So looking at now the standard regulation that speaks about, it says, any person for the purpose of sale, imports into Jamaica, manufacture or process any commodity for which a Compressive standard specification has been declared shall be registered under this regulation in respect to that commodity. So this is what tells all manufacturers of products with Compressive standard that they shall be registered with the Bureau standard, with the NCRA. So as long as you're a manufacturer, if you're making blocks, because persons might say they are not a manufacturer, they are just making blocks, they're just doing a thing. You are making blocks, you are making a product that a compulsory standard is there for. You shall be registered with the Bureau standard, with the NCRA. So now, this is the registration process. So the registration process, you're going to apply for registration, inspector schedule the inspection and sampling, then the analysis of the test report, and then issuing of the certificate. And then now I'm going to ask my dear friend, Mr. Orion, to just show us a video of a run through of the registration process, and then I'll jump right back into my presentation. Orion?
Yeah, man, I'm lining it up.
Okay, great.
On receiving the application form for registration, the inspector will review the application and make contact with the manufacturer to schedule a date for visit. And the inspector will also explain the inspection and sampling process. On the agreed date for inspection, notes are recorded on a designated form during the inspection. This form is created as per the standard specification of standard hollow concrete blocks, JS35, and good manufacturing practices. The areas for inspection include 1. Checking documentation such as the quality control procedures, training records, and the schedule for training. 2. Assessing the quality of materials being used and the storage conditions. 3. Observing manufacturing processes such as batching, mixing, and molding of blocks, storage, and curing process. 4. Inventory management is also observed. 5. The occupational health and safety measures that are in place, such as safety signs, use of safety gears, and first aid kits are also checked. On completion of inspection, the inspector will then collect samples of all sizes of blocks manufactured. 10 blocks will be selected from each side of the same batch and labeled with the manufacturer's unique identification factory
Yeah.
code. A sample request is complete on which the age of the blocks is noted for calculating the minimum test date, which is 28 days after the block is made. Samples are then
Right,
transported
4th of
and
April
subcontracted
2021.
to the laboratory for testing for conformance with the JS35 standard for standard hollow concrete
You have
blocks.
a specific date?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Owen. I hope that presentation was was great. Open doors and you understand greatly. So if you didn't understand, let me get down into it a little more for you. So this form, this is the registration form you'll complete in applying for your registration. And then you will pay the applicable fee. There's a registration fee under review, and then there's a testing fee, and there's also a transportation fee. So we're asking you to complete this application form, make the necessary payments, and the inspector will schedule your visit to start this registration process. In the inspection, as explained, documentations will look at the material, the quality of storage, the manufacturing process, inventory management, occupational health and safety, and then we'll complete the sample request form to collect the samples. We'll collect 10 blocks. So 10 blocks is the amount we collect for the sampling process of each size. Only male blocks are collected. And then we'll label the block. No block is sent to the lab with the name of any factory. We put on a factory code so the lab doesn't know exactly where these blocks is coming from, which factory it's coming from. So this is the process for conducting your inspection that includes sampling. When we send your blocks to the lab, several tests are carried out, which will be explained on your test report in slides coming up. So they look at the dimension of your blocks. These are the tests carried out on your blocks. They measure your blocks, your width, your length, your height, your volume of cavity. They check the weight of the block. So the weight of the block is very important in finding out the density of that block. So your typical 6-inch block should be about 25 pounds. So if we look on this scale that we're seeing on screen, we're seeing 12.3. So we're looking at about 25 pounds for a typical 6-inch block. The volume of cavity, and that is important with the as I said, the web thickness. Most persons pass this part, or in exception for the persons that now are getting the molds that are not made to requirements from China. I specifically saying from China because I'm having a little issue with that right now. Test as per, so now we're looking at the capping. So before the blocks are put under the machine and crushed, there's a thin film that is placed on top of the blocks just to level the surface. So to level the surface, that the load is distributed evenly when it goes under the machine. So, and then the crushing is done to give us the compressive strength of the blocks. So now we're looking at the test report. So if we look at the test report, we see all the tests that were done. So we're looking at the dimensions, which is the length, the width, and the height. Then we look at the density. That's where the weight of the block came in. And we're looking at the width of cavity, the volume of cavity. The cavity is the opening, the pockets in the block. So we do measure those. And the compressive strength, which is when that is you get your strength from your glue, and your glue is your cement. So less glue, less strength. So now let's look at some results. So your 10 blocks is here, labeled from A to J, and we look under the compressive strength column. So these are the strength from your 10 blocks. So you need to look at your strength and see how consistent these strengths are to give you an idea of how well you did mixing and if your average came out to pass in the test. So even if you get this average of 7.04 that is at the bottom, and one of the results were below 5.6, it would constitute a failure because no individual block shall fall below 5.6. I hope I'm coming through clearly. Any questions, please just shoot me the questions at the end of this session so I can give clarity. Now, all being well, you're presented with your registration certificate to go there and advertise that I am a registered block maker who is compliant to the standard and knows how to make a proper block. And you will get this to distribute. Sometimes we do encourage block makers to share this certificate with your hardwares, but I know some people are sometimes hesitant in doing that because they say they don't want hardwares to be selling people block under their name. So get a relationship with your hardwares so it can be consistent, because we don't want them to say selling block for, we go to John Brown hardware and they're selling block for John Tom. And I say, all right, I know John Tom is registered, but let me still do a check and collect some blocks from the hardware to go and check. And that block fails. I go back to that hardware and detain those blocks. And then I go to John Tom factory and run a test at John Tom factory. And John Tom pass. But I say, but your blocks at the hardware fail. So there becomes a red flag. So we want to prevent that. So just please get a relationship so we can have a amicable relationship with everyone. So that brings me to the end of my presentations. And as Dr. Richard says, we'll take the questions at the end of the session. So please write them down.